Remember, 14 people have already lost their lives. Thousands have been forced to leave their homes across Tamil Nadu. Chennai, the worst hit city. It's been witnessing heavy showers over the last week and waterlogging in many areas. Let's take a look at this ground report.
Chennai woke up to this on Thursday, an unfolding nightmare with scary deja vu of the devastating 2015 floods. Roads turning rivers, people desperately trying to keep water away from flooded homes. Rescue teams working round the clock to protect Chennai from drowning. But more nightmarish rain is what Chennai is bracing for. Our reporters in every corner of Chennai to bring you mega real-time flood coverage.
The state has made.
They're standing here to ensure nobody walks into that subway and puts their lives at risk. And they were also telling me that they were working here yesterday when there was not a drop of water. These corporation workers are working round the clock here. They're saying that from 6 a.m. in the morning they've been here trying to clear this entire area. What they were also telling me is that, they just cleaned up the entire area. All the water was pumped out just yesterday. All of the garbage was cleared from here. And since then, overnight, again you're seeing this amount of water because of this kind of rainfall.
At the heart of Chennai, residents face the worst, with water entering homes.
I want to show you how people are suffering. I'm actually entering an individual's home, and this is what it is, Akshita. Let me just ask my camera person to pan and show the visuals. Luckily, it's not entered their home yet because there's this sort of small place here, but water is completely filled. I'm actually going to try and walk inside. Is it safe? Okay, fine. They say that since the early hours of the morning, this has been the situation.
The crumbling infrastructure evident in this flooded government hospital in Tambaram.
For the next 12 hours, things will be critical. There will be heavy rainfall and people have been asked to stay indoor. We're being told that from evening onwards, once again, till late night, there will be heavy rainfall as per the wind and the cyclone, the depression movement.
Even the Chief Minister's official residence was not spared.
We're currently standing on the street that actually leads to the Chief Minister's home, and this street itself, you could see the amount of water here. This is the problem when it comes to rain and Chennai. One whole night's rain, and this is what you could see over here. Vehicles are finding it extremely difficult to travel through this street, and this is a condition in several streets across Chennai.
The city witnessed dramatic visuals of a 28-year-old being rescued by a woman cop after being found unconscious at a cemetery in Kilpauk. In Thenampet, 30 people stuck inside a wedding hall were rescued. According to the Met Department prediction, the worst is still far from over. With 3 days of torrential rain and thunderstorm,
சென்னை செங்கற்பட்டு திருவள்ளூர் காஞ்சிபுரம் மாவட்டத்தில் கனமழை இருக்கும். இன்னைக்கு சாயங்காலம் தான் காற்றழுத்த தாழ்வு மண்டலம் நம்மளை கிராஸ் பண்ண போகுது. அது வரைக்கும் மழை மட்டும் இல்ல, காற்றும் இருக்க போகுது.
Disaster rescue teams are deployed to provide maximum help to the flood-hit areas.
This is how every part of Chennai looks. Everywhere you look, there's water everywhere. And it's going to take days for normalcy to return. Days for this water to actually drain off. As every water body, lake, reservoir is full and packed to the brim right now with water. We can only hope and pray that the worst is behind us, and in the days to come, there's some respite for authorities to ensure that they can pump out this water. With Akshay Nath, Nolan Pinto, Pramod Madhav, and video journalist Shivamurthy, Daniel, as well as Madhu, this is Akshita Nandagopal reporting from Chennai for India Today.
Let me now go straight across to Tamil Nadu's finance minister to find out what lessons has Chennai learned. Thanks very much, Dr. P Thiaga Rajan, Tamil Nadu's finance minister, joining me. Dr. Thiaga Rajan, the big question, heavy rainfall in the last few days, not perhaps as bad as 2015, certainly, but still several parts of Chennai in particular inundated, other parts of Tamil Nadu, North Chennai badly affected. What's the big learning over the last few days that you and your government have had?
Yeah, first, I would say, Rajdeep, that the rainfall has been quite intense. It's not that far apart from 2015. We have had 2 days of more than 20 centimeters rainfall in recorded places. And in the first 10 days of the month, we've had about 700 millimeters. The record for rainfall in Chennai, the previous 3 or 4 records dating back to 1918, between 1,000 and 1,100 millimeters for the entire month. So 10 days, 700 millimeters is actually, a prata higher than the record. Second, I think the learning is that, there are both short-term and medium-term and long-term problems here. The short-term problems are that there was massive corruption in the money that was earmarked for the stormwater drains. The former chief minister said in his campaign speech that were we to get rains again, we would not see the roads flood. That was his basis for seeking votes, particularly in areas like P Thiaga, stating the amount of money that had been spent. And yet those were not done. So there has been some massive corruption. Our chief minister has announced that there will be an inquiry commission. I had already announced a special audit of smart city schemes all over the state for various violations. I can get into it if you care. But in this case, it seems to have been so egregious that he feels an inquiry commission is warranted. In the medium term, I would say that urban planning has not been one of the best kind of priorities or practices of the government, particularly for the last 10 years because it was a different government. But to be fair, I would say historically, we have been less than stellar at it all over India, all governments. I think the biggest learning in the long term is that we have lost very many precious water bodies, the Anais, the Aries, the Kulams, the Kamais, and we are paying the consequences for not having done enough to restore the water bodies in the medium and long term.
I'm glad you're being honest about the water bodies that over the years have got destroyed. But let's look at those long-term and short-term causes that you pointed out for waterlogging. And this is true not just of Chennai, but the country. Short-term, you claim there is corruption in the smart city project, that money that was earmarked a few years ago for better quality drainage. Are you telling me that all that money was siphoned off and that you're inquiring into it? Because as we said, this is a problem across cities, municipal, local bodies. And remember, Dr. Thiaga Rajan, the Chennai City Corporation over the years has been controlled by the DMK, that this money, you can't just pass it on, therefore, to the AIDMK. The fact is that money earmarked for stormwater drains over the years has been misused.
Yeah, well, I think you need to check your facts on that one. The last 5 years, there has been no cooperation. In the case of the smart city, let me just reiterate why I said there would be a special audit. The smart city program is a joint program between the union government and the state government. It called for certain norms to be followed. The starting point of that norm was that local bodies and mayors should have the design kind of approval, and that there should be an oversight committee with MLAs and MPs and other elected representatives who are going to be minding it, and that there should be a special purpose vehicle set up for the multi-year funding that was to happen. All of these were violated in the case of Tamil Nadu. There was no local body election held. The last time there were local bodies, 2016. So one of the primary reasons that I said there would be an audit is that there have been grotesque violations of all the norms in the smart city program, not just in Chennai, all over Tamil Nadu. For example, in my city, nobody was consulted on the program. The single officer who served as both the commissioner of Chennai Corporation, the special officer in lieu of the mayor when there was no local body, and the CEO of Madurai Smart City Corporation Limited made decisions, obviously on political pressure, which nobody asked for, nobody wanted, and we have been saddled with all these consequences. And they didn't bother to constitute the MLA MP committees, and they didn't even bother to get town and country planning approval for their projects. That's how grotesque the violations were. So I knew all that without coming to Chennai. In Madurai itself, I knew all that, and that's why I've announced that we will set up the audit. In Chennai, it turned out that they particularly did this on the stormwater drains, which, as I say, I don't need to claim credit for it. The previous chief minister, Mr. EPS, used it in his campaign rallies. I'm happy to send you the video if you haven't seen it already. It's been circulating all over the internet today, where in T Nagar, he said, you will not have this problem because we have fixed it. And clearly they have not fixed it. So then it requires something more than an audit. It requires an inquiry commission.
So the short-term problem is that the smart city project has led to irregularities you're claiming. Let's come to the long term. And that in a way is again something that is exposed across the country in Chennai in 2015, which is that construction has gone on over water bodies. Water bodies have been completely choked by illegal encroachments. And Chennai also has seen exactly what's happening in my city of Mumbai or indeed Delhi or any city. Do you agree that the fact that despite various expert committees saying that you need to create spaces for the water to drain into these water bodies, the encroachment continues, the lake areas are encroached upon? Is this again a wake-up call once again for Chennai?
Yeah, I would just make two slight varied points. The first is, I think that things that were doable within 6 months of coming to power and 2 months of doing COVID relief in the first 2 months because of 6x second wave compared to first wave, I think it's hard for anybody to fault this government of what we've done in 4 months. I personally was involved in the kickoff meeting for the preparedness for the monsoon, which the Honorable Chief Minister chaired, I don't know, about 2 months ago. And there have been routine meetings and 700 kilometers of drains were cleared. And so within the time period available to us, which is roughly starting in July after we got over the second wave of COVID, the execution on the ground has been phenomenal. And that is why you see, including the last 4 or 5 days, the Chief Minister has been on the ground personally himself, visiting every affected area, explaining the situation, ensuring relief, ensuring food is supplied, ensuring shelters are built. So operationally, the same skill and diligence that our party always had and brought to things like the COVID recovery on second wave, we have done. So whatever was doable in the short term, we have done particularly well, I would say. Others will have to say whether they agree or not. In the medium term and long term, you're exactly right that this needs a longer term solution about the whole management of water, because we have talked about this before, I think, that the problem basically is that once water falls on the ground, it either is going to recharge the ground or run off to the sea or evaporate. The determinant of that math is really whether you have places where the surface area is small and the volume is large. So over time, you can actually percolate and recharge groundwater. And since we have no way of going back and deconstructing, the whole host of 40, 50 years of violations, we are going to have to come up with a systematic approach for groundwater recharge in a way that gives us mass relief across all cities, all areas of the state.
Now, the reason, again, I'm asking you this, and this is again not just true of Chennai, but the country. We've seen in city after city, we've now reached the stage where the vested interests are so entrenched in the real estate sector, hand in glove with many politicians who are builders themselves. So not just in Chennai, but across India's cities, in areas which were formerly water bodies, whether it's the mangroves of Mumbai or the lakes of Chennai, or Bengaluru's lakes, you're finding that the water bodies are now full of construction material. How do you reverse a process that has already pushed cities like Chennai to the brink? The fact that flooding takes place because of the damage caused to the natural drainage system by encroachments. How are you actually ever going to reverse that now?
Yeah, I'm not sure that reversal is possible, but I wasn't talking about reversal. I said there are many different ways to recharge groundwater. We can create new tanks, for example, or we can create ground recharge shafts in every corner, in every street, etc. But I want to make a distinction. I more than you will say that there's a lot of corruption, a lot of vested interests, a lot of land mafia, etc., etc. But encroachment didn't start with them. If you look at Tamil Nadu, at least, the bulk of encroachment has been government encroachment and the entity, private entity and corporate and, those kinds of people's encroachment, educational institutions encroachment. Where I live in Madurai, the six, when I was a boy in the early 70s, the 6 or 7 or 8 tanks around me are now the police reserve line, housing, All India Radio and the Kendriya Vidyalaya, Income Tax Office, the Tamil Lisai Sangam, the Madurai Corporation Office, the District Court, the High Court, etc. So it is the government itself that at various points has started this. And then, of course, others have followed. So, of course, we cannot reverse this. This is not just a question of political will to stand up against vested interests. It is a question of political will to come up with a better long-term plan going forward and something that doesn't repeat the mistakes of the past. We can't reverse it, but we can prevent this from happening in the future and then find other solutions with the new technology and the new equipment available to overcome the damage of these things over the last 40, 50 years.
But would you broadly, in conclusion, believe today, Dr. Thiaga Rajan, that Chennai, indeed Tamil Nadu or all our major metros are finding it more and more difficult to contain these large bursts of rainfall that take place in a short period of time because the drainage system is the one severely affected and there hasn't been enough investment in stormwater drainage? As I said, North Chennai today completely underwater. Do you really believe in that in the next 5-10 years things will improve, or we will have to continue to battle it out for year after year as the monsoons intensify?
Yeah, I believe so. I'll actually add 3 longer-term trends into this that we should think about. One, Tamil Nadu is the most urbanized state in the country. Roughly 50% of the population lives in urban areas. While that comes with many advantages, the consequences of not having good urban planning are also exacerbated by that kind of volume of shift. 2, that the demands for infrastructure are only going to keep growing. We can't expect that they will be cut back at any time. So we have to come up with better solutions for this. 3, there are only so many things that you can do in the short term, but there are a lot of things you can do in the long term. So if you start now with let's say a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, in 5 years, I think we can do a lot of alleviation. In 10 years, we can do a lot more. But I want to point out again, the fundamental difference between 2015 and now is not that we got very little rain, relatively speaking. Relatively speaking, we have gotten more rain. We've got 700 millimeters in 10 days than the 1,080 millimeters in 30 days that happened in 2015. The things that were fundamentally wrong there that have been improved operationally. The Disaster Management Committee meets regularly. The review meetings were held by the Chief Minister multiple times. We started definitely clearing the stormwater drains ahead of time. We did field inspections. Something as simple as dam management has been delegated back to the engineer. In the old, you may remember the CIG report and the reports of 2015 about how the dam was opened too late and then had to flood a lot of places. Dam management has been delegated to the respective engineers of the water management department, and they decide how to manage, and they don't need to wait and get orders from 3 levels up and 5 levels up, let alone all the way to the chief minister. So what could be improved operationally, what could be done in 4 or 5 months of coming to office, I would say we have made a big difference. Otherwise, this 700 meters would have caused much worse damage than this and would have had much worse consequences than this. But there is a limit to what you can do in the short term. There are structural problems. We are the first to admit that, and we will figure out solutions to them. I don't know about reversal, but we can certainly improve the consequences and prevent further damage going forward.
Dr. Thiaga Rajan, as always, erudite as ever, giving us the government of Tamil Nadu's perspective, and perhaps some of those lessons, it appears, from 2015 have been learned, but as always, it's a long road ahead when it comes to water management in our cities. Appreciate your joining us on the news today. Stay safe and stay well. Thank you.